And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, for it repenteth me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord.
Today I've got Cool Frasier.
Hello, I'm Cool and I'm listening.
And we've got Dr. Bennett with us again.
Very good to be here.
And today we're going to be talking about a movie that I did not know much about, and I'm glad it was introduced to me. It's Noah by Darren Aronofsky. And what was it, 2014, I think?
Yep.
It's adapted from a little book called The Bible, which maybe you've heard of.
And other texts.
Yeah, and other texts. Before that, there was a new trailer that dropped this week, and I want to see if you guys saw it and see what you thought about it. And the reason I'm throwing it in here is, well, first of all, because it came out this week, and it's kind of a big upcoming movie. But the other aspect of it is that to me, it's got some overlapping themes. It's kind of about the destruction of the world. Now, obviously, the world has not been destroyed, but the new trailer for the new Oppenheimer movie came out, which is about the development of atomic bombs. And at the time when they were developing these bombs, there was some concern that it might destroy the world. So a little bit, there's some overlap with the Noah story there. Did you guys see the trailer?
Yeah.
Yes.
What did you guys think?
People are already starting to meme it, so I feel like that's a positive, because like for your movie to be popular, you have to have like a TikTok dance in it or a meme. There's no like Oppenheimer doing a TikTok dance, but
that's like good for the eventual marketability of the movie, or
Right. For a movie to be successful, you have to put a TikTok dance in the trailer.
Yeah.
The "What have I done" meme is the one that I'm seeing all over the place.
Yeah, with Oppenheimer's just face being distraught.
Right. He's looking very distraught.
They used my bomb. They blew it up. Yeah.
And we don't want to spend too much time on this. We could spend a lot of time on like Nolan and stuff, but curious where you guys are at, just your general sense on Nolan, and then whether or not you're excited for the Oppenheimer movie, and whether or not this trailer you thought looked good or sucky or what.
Well, I didn't know Oppenheimer was so sexy.
He's a very handsome Oppenheimer. That's true.
They didn't let him keep that haircut from Peaky Blinders.
I don't think it looks very good for a Nolan movie. I'm sort of expecting something cooler from him. It just seems very like there were basically like zero surprises in that trailer. Everything is
like
framed exactly the way.
Biopic.
Yeah, like if you know anything about the story, then you know all of the outlines of all of the conflicts and every position, what everyone's position is, and what your position's supposed to be. And I just found it kind of boring, but I am kind of a fanboy, so I'm willing to like wait and see. But like this, if it was just this trailer, I'd be like, yeah.
Well, or I was gonna say, yeah, it seems like a straightforward biopic where, like, I guess this is more along like, but like Dunkirk even had like war in it, whereas this is just gonna be like some guys in New Mexico walking around talking about stuff, and maybe like the philosophy of is it okay to nuke people. But
well,
they'll
be testing some bombs too, right?
They'll be testing bombs, but which, once again, you're talking to a guy who's one of his favorite documentaries is Trinity and Beyond, the atomic bomb experiments, which just shows footage of the first atomic bomb being tested, Trinity, all
Mhm.
the way to like all of them that were tested. And so like I'm all for watching atomic bomb footage, but at the same time I don't know if there's like a drama there necessarily, but maybe it'll just be like a really cool visual of a CGI atomic bomb.
I'm skeptical. Like there are really interesting moral questions to explore, and I'm just a little bit. That's how you'd have to do it. You'd have to have it be kind of almost like a litigation of some really complicated moral issues. And I, as much as I like Christopher Nolan, I sort of don't expect him to do that here. And that's kind of the only way that I could make that movie interesting.
My thinking, my sense, and I have like no reason to really. This is just like a hunch, but I sense that he's got like an ace up his sleeve. I'm thinking there's gonna be something in this movie where he takes, not like a reinventing history, but he frames something in a way that is weird.
Yeah.
And that's gonna get people talk. I think he's got a trick. He's always got a trick.
Where Oppenheimer's going to go in backwards, or there's going to be like several copies of Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
like fish
Oppenheimer
tanks.
opens like a multiverse or something. No, it wouldn't be that gay, but I suspect he's got something. I suspect there's some aspect of it where he takes, it doesn't rewrite history, but he like, I don't know. He just I suspect he's got a trick. He seems to always have a trick, so I'm gonna bank on that. So I'm just.
Well, that's the essence of the "What Have I Done" meme. The essence of that meme is making fun of like this really facile moral conflict of like, oh no, my bomb was used as a bomb. Like, and yeah, he's got to take it in a different direction than that, or else it'll be a really stupid movie.
Yeah, I think I suspect there's something there. This trailer, one reason I found it interesting because it's the third trailer, and I don't know how many. They only usually release about 3, right? There's usually 3 trailers for a big blockbuster.
3 main ones, and they'll do like TV spots and different edits. And
yeah, and those are just shorter versions of some of the 3. But this one, it seemed like they brought the like more of the crowd pleasing stuff forward. Like they brought some of the previous trailers. It's like you wouldn't have known Matt Damon was in the movie. You wouldn't have known Robert Downey Jr. was in the movie. You wouldn't have known Emily Blunt was in the movie.
Matt Damon's like, I made a nuke. How about them apples?
Yeah. The trailer did have a goofy little Matt Damon joke where like the music stops and I can't remember what he says, but it's like, of course we're trying to blow stuff up or something. Yeah. But this one, they brought a lot of that stuff forward, and they really emphasized like the costumes and the setting and stuff like that. And I don't know. I'm optimistic for Oppenheimer that it's going to be actually really cool.
A cool angle would be, and this would be hard to do for a lot of reasons, but a cool angle would be like basically that quote that gets passed around by Harry Truman where he's like, get this dipshit out of my sight. Cause like the guy, he's sort of like horrified that the bomb was used. And he's like, he didn't drop the bomb. I dropped the bomb. And I can't handle this. He said something like, I can't stand this, this weepy, whatever. Anyway, I think it would be interesting if sort of the back, third of the movie were played from that perspective, like sort of encouraging you into that direction. But I think it's pretty rare to sort of betray the subject of your biopic that brutally. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember
also like I was gonna say his movies are generally, like, in my opinion, like fairly straightforward with their messages and symbolism. Like Interstellar's like, he loves his kids, doesn't he? Or something. and like even Inception is like, oh, it's so complicated, but it's just like you love your wife and stuff. And so like I don't know if he's gonna take like some weird angle on Oppenheimer other than just like, man, building a bomb is sad or something.
Well, just wanted to see what you guys' take was. I'm excited for it. I'm not able to get to many movies in person. That one I'm gonna plan to see, like, opening day, prioritized over Barbie, as much as Barbie.
I'm gonna do a double feature.
I probably won't be able to pull that off, but as much as Barbie's like the anointed right wing bodybuilder movie of the summer, but I will be at Oppenheimer.
When do they come out?
Same day, July 21st or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. If I could pull it off, I'd see both at the same time, but same day. And Nolan's making they're advertising it saying shot on IMAX cameras. I don't know how that's different than just being in IMAX, but whatever.
It says IMAX film cameras.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So maybe
Does that mean not digital?
I guess maybe I'll find one of those places that shows actual reels of 75 and 30 or 35 and 70 millimeter. But anyway, so that's a movie about the baptism of fire of the earth. But we are here to talk about the baptism of water of the earth, and that's Noah. So, cool, Frasier. Give me a little bit of background on this movie, Noah, and like your personal history with Noah.
Yeah, and why are we reviewing Noah on this podcast?
Why Noah?
He sucks, right?
It's a movie about Trevor Noah.
Yeah, it's about Trevor Noah growing up in South Africa, and then it ends with him getting on the Daily Show,
making his way to America, where he just tells Americans how bad they are.
Yep. No, it's about Noah's Ark, right? So I don't know how much I should get into, but I kind of want to introduce the dilemma of this movie and what it's about. So what it's about is it's the story of Noah. So like if you open up your Genesis to like, what is it, like 6-ish or something.
I'm banking on both of you. You guys are much better scriptorians than me, so I'm banking on you guys to know these things.
I don't know exact numbers, but I know the general area, in the scriptures.
In the front of the book, for sure.
Yeah, in the front of the book, for sure.
5 through 9. Genesis 5 through 9. Apparently.
Okay, 5 through 9. I said 6-ish. That's good. So yeah, because the Bible goes through. You got your Adam and Eve story, creation of the world. Then it kind of does like a genealogy thing of like, there was this guy, then this guy, then this guy, then that guy, then this guy. And then it's like, okay, then Noah comes along and there was a flood and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so everybody knows like the children's Sunday school version of the story, which is the animals came 2 by 2. And it's like, it's a children's story typically because it's like you get to look at a giraffe and a panda, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Darren Aronofsky comes along and he's like, I'm an atheist and a Jew or something. And he's like, I'm going to make this movie.
No, just kidding.
Now you have to do more editing. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if I have to edit that one.
But anyway, so it is kind of like a weird choice to be made, although biblical epics and kind of cinema is a thing, right? Like Charlton Heston and blah, blah, blah. But apparently there hadn't been like a biblical epic in like 50 years, which is interesting. And so he's like
a proper big budget one.
Right, like a big studio biblical epic, or at least Old Testament, right? There was Passion of the Christ, I guess. But 2014 rolls around. Darren Aronofsky's a hot item, right? And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this Noah movie comes out, and as I recall, it was advertised as, this isn't your grandkids, Noah. This is a cool Noah, and it's about climate change. That's like how it was advertised. And I remember that like distinctively. And then I remember there was kind of like, I don't know if we were in full swing in like cancel culture stuff around then, but like it was still a thing, like the culture warfare and stuff. So like it became like evangelical Christians were like, this movie ain't sticking to the Bible. And then other people were like, this movie's going to be about how climate change is real.
I bet
And
some
then-
of my listeners are probably evangelical. So I don't, when I talk about you guys, I don't use that voice.
No, right. But that was like the cultural discourse like that was being shown around this movie. Like
Yeah.
whether or not they actually talk like that.
Actually pulled out his dentures to. Oh, sorry. Cool. Frasier pulled out his dentures to say that.
That's right. So anyway, basically the movie comes out and turns out it's neither of those things, right? And so people were like, well, what is this movie? Now, I was under the impression it kind of flopped, but actually it did okay budget-wise. Do you have those numbers, Granite?
I don't have them in front of me, but it was like they spent like 150 to make it, and they made almost 400 or something.
Yeah, so they doubled their
good.
money, which means you're good to go, basically. But it wasn't like a screaming success by any means. And it was kind of critically panned because I think the critics that went to go see it didn't know what to think of it. Because they were expecting this like climate change epic, and it's not that. If you actually watch the movie, it's not that. It's not a straightforward like Charlton Heston biblical show. So what is it, right? And maybe we'll get into that in a little bit, but I guess that's kind of like the setup of like where things were at the time. I actually went back and like found old YouTube interviews where like came out like before the movie came out, and that was like the only thing people wanted to talk about is like, well, you've upset some evangelicals, haven't you? And they're like, why didn't you just stick to the Bible? And like it's a very interesting thing, and you can kind of see that like Aronofsky's kind of like fed up with that question, and actually at the some of the earlier interviews, he's like almost surprised by it. Like he didn't expect that to be the takeaway from the movie. But yeah, I'll pause there. Is that a good intro to the movie? Maybe not, but
Well, yeah, that's a good intro. But also, I know you're an Aronofsky fan already.
yeah.
So tell me about when you like first saw it, and all that.
Yeah. So my favorite movie is The Fountain, which is one of Aronofsky's 3 biblical movies, I would say.
We talked about it on this show.
Yes, we talked about it on the show. Go listen to the episode.
It might be our least listened to episode.
That's correct.
That's okay. It'll have its day.
It will. And then and also maybe I'll just get into this right now. So after The Fountain, which also didn't do super well, and like this is kind of related. So this is like historical context for Aronofsky. The Fountain was initially slated to be a huge budget, epic battle movie with Brad Pitt as the lead, but then basically like Brad Pitt dipped out and they lost their budget. So it ended up being like a $20 million movie, which was not. It was going to be more like $100 to $200 million movie like Noah, but yeah, it ended up being a lot cheaper, and it became what was The Fountain, right? So that's 2006. 2008, Aronofsky kind of like, I don't know if he did it by choice or if he was kind of like blackballed, but he had a much smaller budget. He had $6 million, and he went and made The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke, which was like Mickey Rourke's coming back story, and excellent movie, and like in contention for Best Picture and all that stuff.
I thought it didn't win, or maybe it didn't win, but it was
didn't
up there.
win. Yeah. Milk won, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, it was like widely regarded as an excellent movie, and it is a good movie. And from there, he went and did Black Swan, which was a slightly bigger budget, but similarly kind of a smaller film, but did really well again, commercially and with critics. And so it was after those two movies that Noah happened. And so like he was like a hot ticket item in Hollywood. He was off the back of like two huge successes.
Oh yeah, Black Swan. I forgot about. I mean, I remember Black Swan, but it made 329 off of 13. That's huge.
Yeah. So huge success, and that's basically what got him Noah, which was an officially like big budget movie, right? And
yeah, for sure.
And so anyway, and I was a huge fan since The Fountain, and then had seen Black Swan and The Wrestler, and I'm actually thinking I did go see it in the theaters, but like, yeah, I remember seeing it, and I remember being like, what was that? A little bit, but then what happened, and as what happens with a lot of his movies, is it stuck with me beyond the first seeing, where I was thinking about it. And maybe I don't know if we want to get into that now, but like there's interesting themes in the movie that are biblical in nature and deal with questions of like faith, prophecy, the nature of God, things like that, which are really interesting questions, but it's wrapped up in kind of an odd picture. I will say I don't think this is necessarily his best movie, and actually I watched some behind the scenes things, and like he seemed to be frustrated just at the making of the film as well. But that being said, I do think it's an excellent movie and way better than people act.
Isn't it? I don't want to misrepresent, but haven't you said it's like in your personal top like 10 or something like that? Maybe not that high, but
maybe not that high, but it's up there. It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Okay, so you like it. Bennett, tell us about you, because you recently mentioned it. You saw it, I think, a week or something before I did, and you it sounded like you really liked it. I'd like to hear your take.
Yeah, I mean, I basically during the movie, I was like, oh, this is going to be one of my favorite movies. Like, I already know that it's I would say it's probably top 10 for me. And I guess not necessarily. I mean, there's lots of things that are like weird about it, and I guess the ways that that it was like imperfect were all sort of things I don't care about, and the ways that it was excellent were really conspicuously like strangely excellent. Like, not a lot of movies do you see this kind of thing. And basically, and like, I think a lot of the evangelical and probably even like some of our folks might have seen that movie.
About our folks who are not very smart. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they might have been like upset that Noah is portrayed. Not that he's portrayed with flaws, because like he's portrayed with flaws in the Bible, but like he's portrayed with like the wrong flaws, or maybe they're not even flaws, and like maybe he's really on God's side, and God is this really dark figure, and that sort of upset them. But I loved all of the conflicts that Noah had with every other character. Like, they built this character to have this position that came into tension with every single other person in the movie, and like all of those arguments were neat and compelling to listen to, and actually made you like question your position a little bit. And I think
keep going.
Well, and I don't know. And I was sort of thinking like, how would I have made this movie? Like, I can't imagine, because like there clearly is this like climate-ish, or like pacifism and like
Vegetarianism.
pacifism, vegetarianism. Like Aronofsky is clearly propounding like this particular way of viewing like stewardship, and even viewing the fall. And I think that's maybe one of the ways in which like our like theological take on this would be different from, you know, a mainstream Christian take, is if the fall has wrecked everything and it was all bad and it was a mistake and we have to go back. Like Noah's position is like we have to go back. And in the garden, there's no death, there's no violence, there's no like, and so in order for me to, I have to get back to the type of life we lived in Eden, which that means like pacifism, vegetarianism, like don't touch anything, don't mess with anything, leave it like leave no trace. And you know, like that certainly wouldn't be my take on who Noah actually was, but putting Noah in that seat, it sort of scrambled a lot of categories. Like it made me think a lot about like, well, what if God did want me to be weird in this? Because I'm, you know, obviously we're committed to be weird in all these other ways. And like that puts us in conflict and tension. And by I guess by scrambling those categories, he made the arguments. You don't have an obvious side to be on in the argument. And that was cool.
Yeah, there's a big kind of central thing going on is that he understands his like command in a certain way, but that there's like an inherent, what appears to everyone around him that there's like some contradiction to it. And that's maybe something about the Bible or about prophets that people maybe don't think much about or appreciate, that like they're asked to do things that don't make sense, that don't seem to make sense, at least to the prophet themselves and to the people around them. And the movie spends a lot of time wrestling with himself and with his family over these things. And I thought Tubal Cain was fantastic. What a character. He's such a cool character.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like I think in terms of our theology, like what we actually believe, like there are a lot of situations where we would kind of be on Tubal Cain's side. Like he's making a really compelling case, and obviously, like, you know, he's clearly supposed to be the bad guy, so he's like biting the head off the lizard and the meat is gushing between his teeth, and it's like this sort of visceral, disgusting thing. But like his takes on like dominion and like why we're here, and like I was kind of nodding along to a lot of that, and that was it was cool.
Yeah. There's interesting characters in this, which a lot of that character stuff is not in the Bible, and like, but like it does make the story more interesting, I would say. But like, I guess when I initially saw it, the thing that like I was like, because kind of a big message in this is Noah is under the impression that God wants to wipe out humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whereas in kind of the traditional story of this, Noah is like this wise, gray-bearded man in robes who like physically is talking to God, and God is like, okay, I'm going to put you on this ark and you're going to sit here, and then your children will live and everyone else will die. And that's kind of like how it's presented traditionally, I would say, and how it's understood. But then what I did, like after I watched it for the first time, I hopped into Genesis, and like I read this part, right? So it says in Genesis 6, God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man who I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and creeping thing and fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. And so if you read that, God is saying, I'm going to kill everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the next verse is, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So I read that and I'm like, okay, so like what he did when he made this movie is he actually read the Bible. Like he looked at the actual text. And that's where a lot of this conflict comes from, which that's kind of the really interesting part of this movie is like it's almost super accurate to the Bible. Because the verse prior to this, it's just like, oh, by the way, there were giants in the earth those days. And that's all it says. It doesn't then explain what they were doing or why. And so obviously he takes some creative license to explain, okay, well, these giants are maybe the Nephilim, angels that are talked about in the book of Enoch, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I think it's really cool, number one, that he got to do this, because like there's so many great stories in the Bible, but they are so underserved by traditional storytelling that happens around them, where it's just like, let's do the children's Bible stories, but like with actors. Whereas this, what he did with this movie is he said, what if Noah was real, right? What would he act like? So a guy who supposedly can hear the voice of God, that builds a giant ark and then sits inside of it while all of humanity dies around him. Like, what would that guy be like?
Yeah, he would look very he would look either cruel or stupid or very weird.
Right. He wouldn't just be like a gray bearded guy. Like he portrays him as if, wow, this guy's kind of like almost like an a-hole, right? Like, and he's like super hard. He's able to just be like, nope, everyone has to die. Like, I'm with God and all humanity is going to die. Well, maybe there's room for one or two more on the boat, but I'm not going to let them on because I can't. Right.
Yeah. And
like,
he has to be someone who's tough enough to even to look at his son in the eyes and be like, sorry, bud, you don't get even a crumb. You don't get anything. Like,
yeah. Yeah, and so and then I watched some behind the scenes stuff, and that's basically what Aronofsky was trying to do. Is he said, how can I get a modern audience to relate to these characters, which typically are like larger than life and stuff like that? And like so every instance in this movie is he's saying, well, what if God was a real guy, right? And what if Noah was real? And what if Methuselah was real, right? And the answers to those questions that he comes up with are super interesting, and they cause a lot of like interesting conflict, like Bennett was saying.
Well, and I mean, he's not self-righteous. Like he's always like, yeah, I also have to die. Like it's we're all screwed. We're all worthless. We all have to be destroyed. And so he's got this like a hostile portrayal of Noah, like a sort of Reddit atheist portrayal of Noah would be like, we're the best. We're so good. We're so special and saved. And you guys are all evil. And I think it's interesting that it's like, no, we're here to save the animals. Like that's the animals are who deserves not to be destroyed. We're all going to neck ourselves after this is over, which gives him this, there's this sort of shades of like Heaven's Gate or something there.
Malthusianism.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering where does the idea, is this just Aronofsky, or is this somewhere in other texts or something? Because Noah has this he seems to think that they are the last, like that they shouldn't even try and have kids.
Well, yeah, it's those verses I just read. That's the source of it, is God literally said, I'm going to destroy all human beings.
Well, but then didn't you read the next verse where it's like he found grace in Noah?
Yeah. So that's like that's the arc of Noah, right? Is he's trying to understand. So like this is the other really cool thing I like about the movie is it portrays the way that Noah talks to God through his dreams, which is like a big thing in the Bible, right? Is that like
Mhm.
characters will have dreams and they interpret them, and that's how they decide what to do. So instead of Noah getting some message that's like, you will build an ark and you will live and blah blah blah, he's just seeing visions of like animals living and humans dying, and then he gets a vision of like the schematics of the ark, and that's how he decides, okay, this is what I need to do. So he's just interpreting his own, like, almost like a vague vision of what he's getting from God. And then the big conflict that he has is it's almost left up to Noah whether or not the humans should survive. So how it's portrayed in the movie is Noah has to make the choice whether or not there's going to continue to be humans or there's not.
Yeah, that's
And-
the
Yeah.
that's the thing I found most impressive about the movie is that Aronofsky for being, I guess he says he's an atheist or something. I kind of don't believe him, but that he had, I mean, I don't know if he got this from, reading old rabbinical texts or something like this, but he seems very comfortable with the idea that that a prophet would get information that would get direction from, in the context of the movie, the creator, but that a prophet would get this like guidance there's ambiguity in there that the prophet has to wrestle with, because I think we're pretty comfortable with that, like based on
Right.
the beliefs we have. Like we kind of already knew that, but like I wouldn't have thought that just like a secular guy would know that.
Yeah, and
I
I've
think
asked
actually-
that question myself. Is like, how did he like how does he understand Revelation? Because like he seems to have like a good grasp on the concept for being someone who supposedly has no interest in faith.
Yeah,
which doesn't,
I mean,
which makes no sense when you see what he goes for in like half of his movies. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, he's not an atheist. I think it might be a response to just sort of his contact with religion, but yeah, I don't think he's an atheist. But because I think he's got a better grip on like not only the way that prophecy works, but even the way priesthood works. Like the fact that the decision is placed in Noah's hand, and like there's sort of this idea that like God talks in confused visions or parables, or like it's like there's some transmission problem and he's like not able to just sit you down and tell you in plain English what he wants you to do. But from our perspective, it's like, no, God gives you intimations and hints and he points you in directions because you are here to make choices. You are here to decide things and not just be led by the nose the whole way. And so the fact that God talks to him that way, and it's fundamentally not like, hey, I'm going to talk to you in this really confusing, broad, vague way, but you'd better make the right call. You'd better pick up what I'm laying down. Instead, it's like, no, I'm gonna set these tools before you, and you are going to choose, and your choice will be bound on earth and bound in heaven, kind of a thing.
Right. And also like in the movie, the rainbow comes not at the end of the flood, but when he decides to let humanity continue. Right.
Yeah.
So almost like this is a sign that you made the right choice, which was like really cool too, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think we've it's it's Noah. You know, it's the story of Noah. It's in the Bible, so
Yeah,
we
I can
can't
run
really-
through the plot quick if you want.
No,
for
no, no. I
those-
mean,
or-
I don't think
yeah.
we need to. I'm just gonna say we haven't spoiled it, and you can't really spoil it anyway. But anyone who's, if you listen to this show, I mean, you should go see this movie. You're probably religious if you listen to this show. Like, go.
Can I add
Go
a
watch it.
caveat?
Yeah,
So when you watch this movie, you have to watch it with an open mind, saying, you have to watch it in the idea of, wouldn't it be cool to see the Old Testament portrayed on a big screen in a cool
Yeah.
way? Like, if you're going into it looking for biblical accuracy, you're not going to find it. If you're going into it looking, expecting some kind of Marvel epic, it's not that, right? But what it is really cool. So, like, you got to watch it for what it is.
yeah. I found like a YouTube review of a pastor, an evangelical, I guess, who was very angrily reviewing it as if it was attempting to be like a beat for beat retelling of the Old Testament, and I can like the movie never, I don't feel like the movie ever claims or tries to do that. So if it was saying it was, oh, this is a history movie, like, yeah, that would maybe be dumb,
Right, or
but,
like, you should believe this is what actually happened in the Bible. Like,
yeah, it never.
all the stylistic things around it are just choices made to add color to the story of the Bible. It's not intended to say, this is what everything was exactly like.
Well, and even if you believe that God gave Noah very crisp verbal instructions in Adamic or whatever language they spoke, the story is like, a good story is about you, right? A good story is about your life, and a story in which God talks that way. I mean, there's other ways of making a story like that interesting, but this story is about your moral choices, and it's much closer, at least, to the way that Revelation and moral decision making works for me than, if it were spelled out.
Yeah. Oh, and also think of it more of like I said, this is the question of a guy who watches humanity die as he shuts the door, right? And also, afterwards, he gets drunk and naked is the first thing he does after the flood happens. So, like, it's there in the text, right? Like, if you're looking for textual accuracy, it's all there. But, like, what Aronofsky's trying to do is to say, well, how does that work? And this is just his idea of how maybe that works, right? It's not necessarily the definitive biblical answer to that question.
Yeah. And I would say just be confident in your own, like, faith or whatever of what the Bible says, and then just watch the movie to just to have some fun with it, just to have some something else.
And Aronofsky also said that the flood story is a story that exists in all cultures, right? Like, almost every culture has the flood story, and the Epic of Gilgamesh mentions a Noah character, right? And like, and so to a certain extent, it can be seen almost as like a movie on mythology, more so than just the Bible directly. But the thing I think is cool is, when have you ever seen a seraphim on film, right? A six-winged fiery beast?
Mm-hmm.
But you see that in this movie, right? When have you ever seen Nephilim on film? Well, you get to see him here. When have you ever seen Methuselah wielding a fiery sword in battle? You've never seen that in movies, right? But this, you get to see it.
Yeah, let's go into. I mean, there's a lot of thematic stuff, and I'm sure more of it will pop up as we keep talking. But there's a lot of thematic stuff about this movie. There's a lot, you could have a lot of good conversations about about faith, about how to live, about how to conduct yourself with other people who maybe don't see the same things you do. But let's go into just like the actual movie itself. Like the look and feel of this movie it didn't surprise me too much because I kind of know what to expect with Aronofsky. But to me, I could see some people coming into this and being overwhelmed or annoyed by the way he uses CGI, and saying, this looks like.
Yeah, you've mentioned that, right? That some of it is a little cartoony, right?
I could see someone walking away from it with that take, but it didn't bother me because I think he just leans into it, and instead of being cartoony, it just kind of becomes, and it's like it's animated in a sense, and so
so Aronofsky said he saw Planet of the Apes. And he was like, "Oh, they can do CGI animals now."
Oh, okay.
And that's kind of how he decided that it was okay to do CGI for all the animals. He also, has his like bleeding heart liberal thing of like it wouldn't be ethical to have those animals on set or whatever.
Yeah, he's like a vegan or something.
Yeah. But like, I mean, other than like, because I watched it because you had mentioned that, like, so I rewatched it, and like, I would say the only like weird looking stuff is kind of the animals getting on the boats, is somewhat dated CGI, but the other part is obviously the rock monsters, which are famed in this movie, but they're actually stop motion.
That makes sense. I could the way they move, that makes sense to hear.
Yeah, they're like claymation monsters. So which I think is cool, and it does give them kind of a interesting movement. But then also, it was filmed on location in
Iceland, right?
Iceland, and he said he did that because it's volcanic, which means it's some of the newest Earth. So he thought that only 10 generations from creation would be more like a volcanic look, and yeah, so a lot of the film is shot in Iceland, but then the skies are all replaced because he also mentioned like, what does a sky look like that can't have rainbows? And so like if you watch the sky during the film, there's all kinds of like weird sparkly colors and stuff. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it looks cool.
I think you could go wrong with the visual style. I walked away from it saying I felt it was like rich, but I could see someone just being like, that felt like too much CGI. I didn't feel that way. That's something I could see someone.
Yeah.
And then
I was going to talk about actors or something like that. I don't know.
Well, no, there's a little more on these. Okay. The rock monsters are probably the most interesting choice visually in the movie, and like you say, they're stop motion. But then what I didn't anticipate is how much this might feel like. And in the best way possible, I say this, but it does actually feel a bit like a Marvel movie, because in at least specifically in the parts where it's like these rock monsters have to fight, and I didn't actually anticipate that necessarily happening. I mean, you get these big rock boys on the screen, and like you want to see them fight, but I didn't know if that would play out that way, and you get a very satisfying battle.
Yeah, they smash up some people.
Yeah, they have to smash up some two-ball canes. Yeah. I thought that was great. I thought that was really cool.
It works out really well, and some of the visuals are really good, even like the CGI stuff, but
he found a cool way to give them stakes.
Yeah.
In their battle.
The Rocky guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I liked that it was they were all having a redemptive death, and it's sort of like what does death mean if you're righteous versus if you're wicked?
Yeah,
and also, I mean, the conflict that arises is not in the Bible, but it's kind of a natural question you would have of like, okay, it's starting to flood, and the only guy with a boat is Noah. Are they just gonna like be like, we should have believed him, or are they gonna like fight their way in? And yeah, so like there's a throng of an army trying to cut their way into the ship, which is like a cool thing to see.
I like
Yeah.
the boat design too. I thought it made sense, just a office tower, or or like a bunch of shipping containers in a row made out of logs.
Right, and how it's described in the Bible is a box, right? They just give rectangular dimensions, and so they said, well, this boat like doesn't need to navigate anywhere, and so they were like, it doesn't need a keel or a rudder, it just needs to be a box. And supposedly they built it like to scale, like biblical scale, so like they took into account the Jewish measuring system and built it to that size.
Yeah, I want to be on a cozy timber box on the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
The battle, I mean, it was an interesting choice, and it totally makes sense. I mean, I guess when I envisioned Noah's Ark as a kid, I was sort of picturing that like the flood was so sudden that there could be no response to it. But that actually doesn't make a lot of sense. Like this sort of the rain falling and the water rising, and people having time to sort of fight over and fight for their lives. Like there's this really, I think it's, he was able to like tell some truths about the way people act, even if it's not directly pulled from the biblical narrative, but like the way he did it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
You mean like when he visits the gathering of the Juggalos?
Yeah, the descendants of Cain and their society is a Juggalo festival in the woods.
It's like it's like an orgy, but they're also eating babies, and then it's at that point he's like he I guess had felt some guilt or something about not
right, and his Ham is like another interesting character we haven't talked about, but Ham is like, well, can't some of these people be good? He's kind of like the voice of a lot of people, where he's like, he's looking for his own GF. So Ham is the incel character for those listening, right?
Yeah, he's also a libtard who wants to open the borders.
Right, but he's a libtard and he wants to open the borders, and he's like, but not all of them are evil. Like some of them are okay, and like, so there's kind of like that back and forth, which doesn't happen once again in the Bible, but it's an interesting way to like show like how Ham and Noah could have a conflict that would lead to Ham being cursed by Noah.
Yeah.
And Ham once again is kind of the voice of, a lot of people are like, well, why did he have to kill everyone? What kind of God would do that? He's like the Reddit atheist almost.
Yeah, and I think they did a really good job of, again, like a hostile Reddit atheist depiction of this would be like the bad guys are like having sex and drinking, and like they're sinning in ways that the Reddit atheist thinks is like not really a sin. But these guys are like, yeah, they're eating babies and raping and throwing people in
like
mass
trampling people, and yeah,
right. It's like you can see how these people would have it coming,
eating animal flesh without even cooking it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we'd never do that on this side of Twitter.
But I mean, and like Ham, he clearly has ulterior motives, but they're very understandable ulterior motives. And and then there's like this dimension of like, could you sort of do the math in your head of like a boat full of righteous people. It's this young girl who comes from the bad, side of the tracks. Like, would she really wreck everything, or would she kind of figure it out? And of course, like in our,
Ham's Ham's bear trap girlfriend.
Ham's bear trap girlfriend. That's right.
Yeah, she
gets caught in a bear trap and
then she gets
trampled.
stampeded.
Yeah.
The movie doesn't. The movie obviously doesn't like get into this, but it seemed like a foregone conclusion to me that she would have had some issues. She would not have been able to abide by their life.
Well, I mean, biblically, it does turn out to be the case that Ham's wife did bring some things forward. So I mean, there is that. Like, it's a defensible interpretation.
Oh, so just really quick, like if you haven't seen it, there's also an additional character of Emma Watson, who is a child they find, who is like the only survivor of some descendant of Cain massacre that takes place, and she's been stabbed through the womb as a child. But then they kind of raise her as a daughter, but then she ends up being the love interest of the oldest son. And
it's Shem, right?
Yes.
And then Seth's the youngest.
Or Japheth.
Oh yeah.
That's the youngest.
And so she's like another character in it. And I'm not like a Harry Potter guy, so I have no nostalgia for her or whatever, but I thought she did a good job in this movie. And
is very much peak Emma Watson. Like
peak Emma Watson,
just, like, top of her game, in my opinion.
Yeah, just minutes after filming, she hit the wall, and it was over.
Yeah, it was.
I'm just kidding. I don't hold that view. I think that's like goofy, but I listened to one like discussion about Noah, and someone did say she just seemed a little too dainty for the role. She's got these fine features and she's small and stuff. I mean,
I kind of liked that.
Well, it looks good on screen, but at the same time, it's like, is she going to make it in the?
Well, what do you think of Jennifer Connelly as Noah's wife?
I was really surprised. I didn't. I mean, I shouldn't. I don't have any reason to believe this. I just don't. I never thought of her as much of like an actual actress, but I thought she did great.
Yeah, and she's a trad housewife, like doing like plants and herbs and stuff, and like herbal medicine.
In very rich soil. At the end of the movie, at least.
Yeah, I thought her delicateness was sort of. I think it contributed to the whole story. I mean, because the whole point of it is that she's like, can she handle this tough situation? It's like, well, she can't. Like, that's the whole miracle, right? The whole miracle is that she is ill suited to. They're not like evolutionary specimens. They're righteous, and they get magic miracles, and so yeah, the fact that she's preserved in spite of being this kind of wispy, willowy creature, I think it fits perfectly.
And then so the story begins. They show Noah with his father, who gets killed by Tubal-Cain. And then fast forwards to when he has a wife and kids, and they're just like living their like pacifism life, eating berries off the ground or whatever. And then he has his vision, and he's like, okay, I got to get to Methuselah to like help interpret this. Methuselah is the oldest man who ever lived, and basically, according to the biblical genealogy, he basically lived up until the flood. So, which would have been Noah's grandfather, and so he goes to try to find him, and ends up getting aided by rock giants.
Well, on the Methuselah thing, that's played by Anthony Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
He does good. He's good. He's good for the role.
This is like perfect for him. Oldest man ever.
Yeah.
After having just watched the Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs, it's good to see him in this. Like, I feel like this is a more human character than those ones.
Well, this is cool. This introduces something I find interesting about how the movie handles the topic of the creator and the relationship between Noah and the creator, because Methuselah, he gives him the seed that like sort of gets the ball rolling on, like he gives Noah the special seed that creates a big forest so he can build the boat. And
from the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, special Garden of Eden seed. And Methuselah also heals the Emma Watson character, heals her womb, makes her whole so she can
secretly.
Yeah, but then here's the weird part where it's like when Noah learns of this from his wife, he's like mad, right?
Uh-huh.
And this is where like it doesn't compute, like maybe for us or maybe just for me, but it's like, by what power does Noah think Methuselah is doing that? Like why would he be mad? Because if Methuselah is able to do that, like,
right, it's like a miraculous birth, so why aren't you on board? I don't know, I'm okay with it.
Well, I'm okay with it in the sense that it's just showing it. They just have a different understanding of God or the creator than I do.
Right. Like I guess, yeah, from like a religious point of view, you would say like, well, wouldn't a prophet be able to recognize, God's hand in doing that, right? But yeah, I mean, that's what's interesting about the Noah character in this movie is he is kind of like, he's like made up his mind, right? He's like, I'm going to do what God says, and God said we have to kill everyone, right?
Yeah,
so
he's
this
also
has happened, it's wrong.
He's sort of learning on the job and figuring things out as he goes. So,
well, yeah, and
I mean, obviously, he could have like figured it out immediately, but that, I guess, there's no drama there. But
the signal that he gets to say everybody has to die is the fact that he can't find a suitable wife for Ham, right? Like he goes into the city to look for a
no. He almost like changes his mind, right? He's like, okay, maybe we just get a wife and we'll just let the kids have a wife, whatever, right? But then he like changes his mind when he sees how wicked they are, and then he's like, well, this is a sign from God that like everyone is supposed to die.
Right, which is like, to me, that's like a little bit of a weaker signal than miraculous healing and conception. Yeah. But and so that's probably the only beat of the movie that felt a little forced, a little like, you're sort of, you're making problems for the characters for the sake of drama. For the sake of narrative, instead of exploring this situation kind of realistically, fairly.
Well, I also think I'm okay with it in the sense that why does Noah get drunk after the flood? Like, why is he conflicted? Why is he troubled? And there could have been a lot of answers to that, but part of it is in this story is, man, I was such a jerk to my family.
He's dealing with the shame, right? He's like, oh, I was can't believe I almost did that. I better go live on the other side of the island.
So like, it portrays a flawed prophet, but like that's like such an interesting thing to do. Like, name another movie that deals with it, the idea of a flawed prophet, right? There's probably a couple, but there's not many.
Yeah, there's lots of like false prophet movies. But almost no.
I'm sure we could find an example, and if you're listening, if you have an example, leave a comment or something. But normally when they handle, like when movies try and handle this, it's just false prophets, or it's like
or it's like an all-knowing prophet of some kind, right. Like,
or he has some sort of prophetic power, but it's like not obviously of God or something. He's just like a jerk or bad or something. I don't know.
Dune does it, but that's for another podcast that I'm recording this weekend.
I thought it was an interesting, another interesting on the topic of Methuselah and Lamech, Noah's dad. Another sort of like a lane he turned into, a direction he chose to go. Instead of making, because like, again, in my head, the story of Noah, and this is me making it up too, but I think a lot of people make it up this way in their head, is there's just people, right? Like the world is just full of people, and all of the people have become wicked, including presumably like Noah's extended family, except for him and his kids. And so the conflict is just Noah and his family on the one hand and everybody else on the other. But they make this choice to be like, oh no, there was totally this righteous lineage all the way up to Noah, this righteous people. They were exterminated. It's like the road.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, they're the last of the righteous people.
Right.
Like of that lineage.
Like, it's not that they all turned wicked. It's that they were, killed and raped and eaten.
And the only people left were Cain's descendants.
Right. And so the decision to make it, what's a race war? I mean, essentially, like it's an ethnic conflict.
Hey, all of Cain's descendants were white. What's up with that?
That was a big thing in the. So there was a big backlash about there on the one side there was the Christian stuff, but there was also a lot of people mad that it was the cast was, and I don't think we've even said the name Russell Crowe, but Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, Emma Watson. People were mad about that too. That it's like these should have been, more Judaic people
like
or
Idris Elba, Noah.
Yeah, it should have been Idris Elba and Viola Davis.
Beetz. No, Zazie Beetz.
Zazie Beetz as the daughter. Michael B. Jordan.
I have to work in a Zazie Beetz reference every episode. Michael B. Jordan.
But like it was a really they made the first act of the movie really compelling by telling the story that way. Having it be this.
Well, and they show the people of Cain essentially have technology, right? Which is another really cool thing.
We haven't gotten into that. The beginning of the movie explicitly is like industrialization is bad.
Yeah.
Making metal and making using gunpowder and stuff. This is bad.
But yeah, we're fans of Uncle Ted, so that's okay for us.
Yeah, I mean Aronofsky probably meant it more from just the the vegan angle, but there's other.
No, he actually said he wanted it to feel like it could have either been the end of our civilization or the end of like the biblical civilization, like it could have taken place at any time, and maybe this has happened many times over. Is something he kind of said, which is a cool idea, and it's interesting also from like I don't know, but yeah, the idea that like this was like an advanced civilization that had kind of lost favor is kind of an interesting idea, and goes to kind of your Tolkien themes and your and kind of some other like biblical speculation that like
Agartha.
Adam was actually this technologically advanced guy, ancient aliens type stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Tolkien though, because I earlier compared those battle scenes to like Marvel, but the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings is a better comparison to how those battle scenes looked.
Yeah.
Like with the when the trees got involved and stuff.
The other thing, so you should watch this movie alone for the like 3-second scene where Methuselah like has a fiery sword and lights everyone on fire. But then the other scene that makes this movie worthwhile is after everything's calmed down after the flood happens, he tells the story of creation and Adam and Eve to his children, and it's possibly the best rendition of the creation and fall of Adam that has been put to film that I've ever seen in any medium, in any location. And it's so good. Like, I just love that scene. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on it.
I liked it. I told you about it. I had actually used that footage in another. Before I even knew what this movie was, I'd used like that creation footage in another project I worked on. But
yeah, I saw that, and I assumed you knew, but yeah,
I didn't realize it came from there. Yeah,
but it's almost like once again, it's like a stop motion kind of look of kind of, and he's telling like almost, it's like a shortened version of the biblical account where it's like the first day there was darkness and then another day and he's running through it, and as he's running through it, it shows like kind of like the Big Bang is let there be light, and then it shows the earth forming out of like materials, and then the moon forming, and then the waters gathering together, and then it starts showing animals, and it follows a single animal as it changes into different animals that eventually end up being like a monkey, and then it opens up into like the Garden of Eden where there's a glowing Adam and Eve. But anyway, I really like it.
I like it too. And then it also another thing where Aronofsky, it's like, oh, how did you come down on this side of the question? But he also seems on board with the idea of the world being created out of existing material. Like it's not. Some believe that it's not like that. Some believe it just was made out of nothing, out of nowhere. But he depicts it as being like organized. It's kind of more the way we think about it.
And he shows Adam and Eve as like these glowing creatures as opposed to like monkey men. So, which is also like a cool thing.
Yeah, I like those visuals of the Adam and Eve, glowing Adam and Eve. It's very cool.
So the one thing I don't have a take on, and I was wondering if Bennett had a take on it, is what about the snake skin? What do you take from that?
Oh yeah, the wisdom of the serpent. Yeah, and sort of the utilization of the fall, the turning of it to healing. It sort of rhymes with the brazen serpent raised in the wilderness.
Right.
And that the serpent, the snake skin he wears, that's supposed to be like the serpent.
Right, because in that in the story, it shows the snake shed its skin, and then it goes goes towards Eve, and Adam is like picking up the skin of the snake.
Oh, so it's not, they didn't kill the snake, it's the shed skin of the snake.
It's a shed skin of the snake, and then he passes it down, and Lamech has it, and it gets taken by Tubal-Cain, and then Noah gets it back when Tubal-Cain comes back.
Yeah, to me it represents the priesthood, right? In a pretty straightforward way, which they give it to the ladies at the end. Didn't like that.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
But
okay, so
because it's like the source of their magic powers, right?
Something
their
like
magic
that
comes from the snake skin.
Yeah, there's some kind of like glowing magic in it. I don't know. But yeah, that's part of what I like about Darren Aronofsky's movies in general, is he'll add these things that are just kind of like, almost like in the background, right? But there could be like a lot of meaning there, things to think about, but like, I don't totally know exactly what it's supposed to be. But
I think that one's pretty straightforward. He's our guy. I think he's it's kind of like Steve Martin. He was baptized in secret. I think he's our guy.
Yeah, so that's like a question that like I've had for a while. I'm like, is he secretly our guy, right? And so I listened to an interview. I was trying to find interviews on Noah, but I think because of like the backlash, like a lot of the interviews like disappeared or something, or like he maybe didn't do the press tour as much. So, for background, apparently they screened this specifically in like evangelical areas, because they didn't want to have a backlash. So they were trying to like gauge, are they okay with how we're portraying Noah? And basically, like, they hated it, right? And so they made an edit that was more true to the Bible. And they showed that to them, and they hated that even more. And so they kind of knew they had a problem on their hands when they were releasing it. So yeah, it's interesting trying to find interviews on it, because there's plenty of interviews on The Wrestler, on Black Swan, on even Mother, and stuff like that. But there's like nothing on Noah. And but I ended up finding one. It was an interview on Mother, but it was like a longer interview, and so he talked about Noah and Mother. And if you haven't seen Mother is a horror movie shot in a single house that is a retelling of the entirety of the Old and New Testament. So go watch that if you want to feel depressed. But anyway, so that has a bunch of other religious themes that are very interesting to think about. And also God has a wife in that movie, which is weird, I guess.
Yeah, where is he getting these ideas?
Yeah, where's he getting these ideas from?
Right.
That reminds me of Norm Macdonald. Where do you get your ideas? I want to ask that to Darren Aronofsky. But anyway, he did an interview with William Friedkin. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you actually believe, Darren? He's like really pushing him. And he's like, well, it's not really about what I believe. You know, I'm using mythology. I'm trying to portray characters. And he's like, no. Like, you obviously have some beliefs here. Like, what do you want people to think after they've seen your film? And so he starts talking about like, well, it's about, you know, climate change and stuff like that. Because Mother has a similar message of like people screwed up the earth or whatever. And he's like, so we're supposed to think about climate change when we watch this? And he's like, no, it's also like, you know, he's like, what do you want people to do when they see your movie? And he's like, well, I think they should vote for better politicians or something. Like Aronofsky says this. And he's like, so the message of this movie is to vote? And he's like, well, no. So like he was really pushing him. Like it's a very interesting interview based on like our conversation today and stuff. And basically he's like very dead set on not saying. Like he refuses to say. But there's definitely something there. But I don't know why he's like so adamant. Well, I kind of get it because like it's not about what Darren Aronofsky believes, right? Like these themes should be universal. And he the movie itself, actually he wrote a poem when he was 13 about Noah's Ark, and it won some award from the UN, which is funny. He wrote it for a class and his teacher submitted it for him to the UN and it won an award. But anyway, he believes like there's kind of this power in storytelling. Like this is the real like Darren Aronofsky belief. And by like making these characters relatable. So like, for instance, his previous movie was about a ballerina and the one before that was about a wrestler. And so how do you make a ballerina and a wrestler relatable? You know, and then how do you make Noah from the Bible relatable? And that's kind of what he's doing. And I mean, even in Mother, he's like, how do you make God relatable? So like, to a certain extent, it is more about the stories for him. So I get why he's avoidant of answering the question, but it was very interesting to see him try to like wiggle his way out of the pushing from Friedkin.
Really, if he were so married to his interpretation and his message, he wouldn't be good at this.
Right.
Like, that's not how you tell stories well.
But I think for him, he wants the story to be out there and for people to make their own calls on it. One of the things he said is his main goal is to not bore the audience and to get a reaction out of them. So he said specifically about this one this is the age where people are watching stuff on their laptops or on their phone, and he wants people to not be checking their notifications while they're watching his movies. He wants it to suck in their attention. So, and I think he does a good job at that. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about the question of like, what does Aronofsky believe? But I do think ultimately, like, it doesn't matter what he believes because like what he's made kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, he's obviously doing some. Either he believes more than he's saying, or he's at least doing very interesting reading.
Right. Like, I don't know if it's just the nature of the stories he's decided to stick with, which he's sticking to like these biblical themes and stuff that makes his stuff so interesting. Like, it turns out that the Bible is like kind of a good story,
Yeah.
But like at the same token, we've seen biblical stories that are not engaging, So I don't know if it's just the nature of the stories he's confronting or the questions he's asking, but yeah, he's hitting something.
So he's definitely an endowed member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're all in
That's
agreement
right.
on that.
Yes.
But just imagine if he articulated that like to anybody, like to his wife or his dog, and it got out. And I mean, obviously I'm being a little tongue in cheek here, but whatever his belief is, if he was like out front with it, like, oh, I'm actually a Jehovah's Witness or whatever it is. Everything that he did from then on would be like, oh, I'm on to you, Aronofsky, telling me about Jehovah God and the torture stake and not getting blood transfusions.
He probably thinks he's one of the 144,000.
Right? Can you imagine? Like if I were him, I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, he also made The Whale. I assume that's a biblical movie.
Yeah, it's about Jonah and the whale.
Yeah.
Remember that part where Jonah's masturbating to gay porn?
Jonah's
eating a bunch of pizza.
Jonah's a 600-pound
yeah.
guy.
One interesting Aronofsky call out is typically in his movies the main character either dies or is extremely effed up at the end of the movie, and this is kind of one of the exceptions, although technically Noah's a little bit effed up.
Yeah, but he's more like a Vietnam vet instead of
Spoiler alert for all of Aronofsky's movies, but the main character of all those movies die at the end.
He's like a war criminal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the vibe. And
I mean, I did watch it again. Oh, go ahead.
What?
I was gonna say I watched it again, and the part when like the humans are like trying to like claw in and they're like climbing up the last mountain that's available. It's like
smashed against the rocks. Yeah, heavy.
It's rough.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good action movie too. I mean, at least there's good like fantasy action.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't have much more to say about it, but I highly recommend it. I'm glad you put it into my path.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I saw it, a long time ago, but like for me, it like made me ask questions religiously, and like, I was like, wow, this is like a really cool, because like the core of the movie is it's about like God respects the agency of man, which is like a really cool idea to show.
Yeah,
where he basically is like, I'm leaving it up to you, Noah, and also another thing for kind of the Adam falling and stuff like that. A lot of people believe like what Adam did was a mistake and stuff like that. But from our theological perspective, like the idea that he chose it, and he also chose it even though he wasn't supposed to, quote unquote, like he was commanded not to. That's kind of like what this is, where like Noah has a commandment where he's supposed to kill everyone and then decides not to, but then that was actually the right choice, which is like a cool thing.
Yeah, that's the thing that his wife Jennifer Connelly keeps sort of saying. He's like, well, the creator gave you this command because the creator knew exactly where you'd fail, or like where you'd like, not necessarily where you'd fail or where you'd hit your limit. Like that's why he picked you. Like, and which is very similar to how we think about the garden in the fall.
Yeah, which I'm sure, I mean, apart from the rock monsters, I mean, forget about all that. Like the part of this movie that probably infuriated evangelicals, and probably the part of this podcast that will infuriate your legions of evangelical fans is probably the idea that God co-signed the fall. That's a big no-no for them.
Yeah. I do think, I mean, in regards to like and I know when we talked about it quite a bit, but one last thought on like the Christian response was, they were upset that it wasn't accurate. But then I think then they will happily go and watch like a Marvel movie, which is just sort of like vaguely vaguely pagan or Norse mythology, like then they'll just go watch an action movie about that stuff. And it's like, well,
Like
I
at
mean,
least this has some religious undertones and stuff and respects the Bible to a certain extent. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't want people making Bible movies that just try and make the Bible prophets look evil or something. But this movie doesn't try and do that. Like I'm okay with a lot of that that artistic liberty. You know, if they're not just out for blood, like, you know, I'm okay with them having some playing around with some of the ideas.
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating that it did how it did. Oh, speaking of which, one of the things I saw in the behind the scenes thing is Aronofsky was kind of voicing some frustrations. So when they went on location in Iceland, they had a bunch of like weather issues and lighting issues because like apparently it rains every day there. And so and then like they had to like, you know, he had like hundreds of extras and to film like the big battle scenes and stuff like that. And he like turned to his like cinematographer and he was like, what you lose on these big budget films that I understand now is you lose precision. Because he likes to do like a lot of takes and stuff. So like he was saying how it's somewhat frustrating where you can't get exactly what you want on these big budget movies just because the daily cost of keeping everyone there is so high that you only have like 3 hours to shoot in the day. Whereas on a smaller budget movie, it's so much cheaper to keep everyone there that you can shoot for 18 hours in a row and get things exactly how you like them. But yeah, he was like, you know, you only have X amount of days and you have like 2 hours in each of those days to get everything done. And so you lose some of the precision in the filmmaking. So as far as like the faults of this film, and I think where it's weaker than his other movies is kind of in that, is like the other movies, like especially like The Wrestler and Black Swan, they are so precise and so like tight. Like everything in it is great. Whereas this, there's some stuff that like, well, that didn't work quite as well as this or blah, blah, blah. But that being said, I still really like it.
Yeah, just based on how he is, and how things are now, he's probably never going to get a big budget movie again.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll get 150 million again, which is sad because I would like to see it. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was the libtard reception of the movie, because we talked about like the conservatard reception, which was not good. But the libtard reception, they were like, haha, conservatives, we're getting our liberal biblical movie. And then they go and watch it, and it's like dealing with like agency and choice, and it's kind of pro-life.
Yeah.
and they're like, oh crap, this isn't what I wanted. So like it didn't really please either of like the warring sides of the culture war. And I think that was part of its downfall.
Yeah. Well, I got nothing else, and I'm kind of up against time. But you guys got any last comments?
Don't watch Mother.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people who like this podcast would probably want to watch Mother.
Yeah. Although I would like to talk about it with Bennett.
I might be willing to endure that for you. Cool, Frasier.
You can fast forward the last like 20 minutes. I'll allow it.
No, I this is certainly top 10 for me.
Nice. We didn't even bring up Requiem for a Dream.
Oh, yeah, geez. Definitely a different role for Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, everyone go watch that. Just kidding.
Yeah, don't go watch that. I just want to say one last time, Tubal Cain, played by sort of the non-union Mexican equivalent of Mickey Rourke.
But he's British. He's kind of like a British gangster guy.
Yeah, wasn't he in Snatch?
Yeah, but he kind of looks like Mickey Rourke in the role with the long hair. So yeah, it is weird.
Yeah. He's probably my favorite character in the movie.
Really?
He's great in the movie.
What?
He's great.
Yeah, he and the role that he's given and the sort of his relationship to God and Noah and Ham, they're all just really, really interesting, and he's definitely taking like the right wing bodybuilder, like it's like Tubal Cain definitely suns his balls, I think. And
yeah, he's might makes right.
Yeah, but in kind of a sophisticated way. Like he's sort of right about dominion, and he's sort of right about like, why are we here in these bodies? What is this all for if we're not supposed to, be in our bodies and do body stuff? And which, obviously that would be our take too. And it had me kind of reaching for that. I mean, obviously everybody's kind of reaching for that synthesis of, you see the truth in some of these ideas, and you're trying to harmonize it with sort of what you grew up with. But he definitely took me in some interesting directions on that score. And I'm probably going to watch it again just to like firm up some of those thoughts, honestly. Like, it was a really
do a watch party.
We should. Yeah. Live stream it.
You remember when he tries to get Ham to eat the animal, and then there's a big thing, about eating in the movie where there's like 3 or 4 times where a turning point for a character involves eating something. And he tries to get Ham to eat, which would, signify that he's on his side. And Methuselah he spends half the movie looking for the red pill berry.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say something about that is another right-wing thing on there, and kind of like your Joe Rogan hallucinating chimp or whatever, is he gives him some kind of mushroom tea, and that's when he has like a further vision. And yeah, so like I feel like a lot of people who like that type of stuff would like this movie too.
Another angle on that is the fallen angels, the fact that they are imprisoned in stunted, damaged earth, and like their legs are different lengths, and they can't really,
their wing got like glued to their back and stuff.
Right. It's definitely in this frame of like the flesh is bad, reality's kind of a mistake. The idea that you're not even supposed to pluck the flowers because it's all supposed to be left just as it is. There's just lots of made me want to tell some stories, because like there's different. I think Aronofsky is like really, really, really right on some things, and like extremely, completely wrong on some other things. And it would be fun to like try to get the Rubik's Cube lined up, but there's all kinds of intermediate configurations of that Rubik's Cube that you'd have to do before you could get there. It's I
think he gets some stuff right about ballerinas. All right, guys, I will cut it off there. There's plenty more to say, but
maybe we'll do it in future Aronofsky movies.
Yeah, I mean, when this podcast gets like way bigger, we'll just do some of these movies again. We'll just do it a second time.
Yeah, man. I do like that watch party
one last
idea.
thing. Yeah, we should do it. In my behind the scenes looking stuff, apparently the scene in The Wrestler where Mickey Rourke cuts his head, they had this whole like contraption for him to do that. But he was like, I don't want to sit in the makeup chair that long. I'll just do it for real. So he actually cuts his head with a razor blade in that movie. But anyway, we'll save that for the Wrestler podcast.